Hi, I'm Will, and this is a help video for the second exam for CSCI 1300. This is question 17, and this one is definitely probably one of the hardest ones on the exam. It's certainly the longest one on the exam. Two structs, two functions, a main function, and three parts to this question. So it's definitely a lot of pieces going on. It's easy to get overwhelmed. Hopefully, take a minute, absorb everything. Hopefully you were able to save some time for this question because there is a lot of moving pieces, and they're all kind of happening at once. When it comes to something like this, I always start with what are the questions. There's a lot of information here. There are libraries, there are like 4 variables, 2 in each struct. The functions have inputs and outputs, and there's a main, who knows what it's doing. But a lot of those pieces of information don't help you. They're not important, and they're not what we're asking in the question. So instead, let's focus on exactly what is part A asking, what is part B asking, and what is part C asking, and see if we can go from there. So let's start at the beginning with part A. This one's nice, it's multiple choice, so I can use process of elimination or something, but let's look at the question. What effect does change name student1.name have on student 1, and why does it not affect student 2? Tricky, 2 questions in one. But let's see if we can answer it. So what effect does change name student1.name have on student 1? So, I can see where it's being used here in the main function. Student1.fullname is equal to change name student1.fullname. So that doesn't exactly match what is happening in the code versus what's happening in the question, right? This one says full name, this one just says name, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to be the same variable, right? I doubt that this is like a trick. It's also multiple choice. Like one of my options is not, there is a error because the variables don't match or something. Okay, so what does this line of code do? The change name function takes in a name and it outputs a name, and it just looks like it says it sets the first name to Michael and the last name to Jordan. I'm not really sure why that's helpful, but if we look at the structs, that seems to be okay. So a name is just 2 strings. So name.first Michael, name.last Jordan is fine. And it changes those variables and just returns the answer. So it seems like it does modify student 1. Option C says it doesn't modify student 1 because the function does not return a value. We know that's wrong. I can see it return a value. It's return name right here. So I can pretty safely eliminate option C. Option D is also really interesting. It causes an error since change name is modifying a const parameter. Well, I don't really know what a const parameter is, right? Especially because this isn't a class, right? Const isn't something that you would have encountered at this point. So I think we can pretty safely eliminate D as well. Okay, that just leaves A and B, and they both agree. It modifies student 1, so hopefully we're okay there. Why does it not modify student 2? Well, option A says not student 2 because each object is unique. That seems reasonable. Option B says it does modify student 2 because change name works on all student objects. I'm not super convinced by that. There's a handful of reasons. One, the question is kind of leading. Why does it not affect student 2? Well, the answer can't be it affects student 2. I think that would, be a weird way to phrase that. But second of all, the change name function doesn't talk about student objects at all. It just says name, 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 right? So it's probably not B. So I would select A here. It modifies student 1 and not student 2 because student 2 is a unique object. Great, 1 down. Part B, what will the output of main be if adjust scores is defined as follows? Great, another function, as if we didn't have enough on our plate already. And there's a main. So we're just asking, what is the output of main? So hopefully that's not too crazy. Main sets up a student. Okay, so what is a student? We can look at the student struct and get some clues. A student has a name, a full name, And like we said earlier, a name is just 2 strings. Okay, so this student's name is Alice Johnson. That's their first name, last name. That seems okay. And then they also have an integer array called scores with 3 scores in it. If we look at print student info, we can get some more context. It's definitely not a requirement, but it looks like there are scores from math, science, and English. That's why there's 3 numbers here. Okay, interesting enough. This student happens to have an 85, a 90, and a 78. Seems reasonable. Then we do adjust scores, students1 dot scores. So what does that line do? Well, adjust scores is the function, so we're calling a function, and the input is an integer array with 3 things in it, right? I can see that right here. So it's got to be this int array, right? This is student1 dot scores. Okay, and it seems to make a bunch of changes. Great. So scores 0 gets 5 additional. So this 85 becomes a 90. And then scores 1 loses 3. Okay, 87. And plus 2 on scores 2. Nice, 80. Bump that up to a B. The last line of code here in main is print student info and then the whole student. So for this one, I can just go through print student info 1 line at a time and figure out what it does. It couts the word student, easy enough. There's some colons. And then s.fullname.first. Okay, s is the input. So s is going to be this whole student variable. Full name, that's Alice, Johnson, but just first, so Alice. Then there's a space, great. And then s.fullname.last. Well, that's just the same thing, but it'll print out Johnson. And this seems pretty reasonable. If I was printing out a student, I would say their name first. Seems okay. Okay, nline cout math. And then the first score in the array. Well, that score is 90. Same thing for science and English. It prints out the second spot and the third spot in the array, respectively. Nice. Good work, Alice. Okay, one more. Part C. This is definitely the trickiest one. It's easy to get tripped up on what's going on. Main is exactly the same. We set up Alice as a student, we adjust Alice's scores, and then we print Alice's information. But the key difference is how that adjustment happens. This void function adjusts scores of the student as the input. Let's compare side by side. I think that would be the most helpful. So over here, in part B, the student isn't put in the array. It's just the array as the input, and then we adjust each score. Over here in part C, we take a student object. So it seems weird that these questions are right next to each other. The code basically looks identical. I think if I were taking this course for the first time, my guess would be that I get the exact same thing. Copy paste my answer, I'm done, move on. But that's not actually what happens. This one is really tricky. Remember, only arrays are passed by reference, right? It was subtle, but back in part A, we knew that student was changing because we had to return the name at the end. Here, we don't return the student. All that information is actually lost. So let's walk through what happens on each line of code. First, the student is set up. Alice has her name and her 3 scores. Great. Then I call adjust scores, and it makes a copy of that student. So I have my little copy object, and my copy has a first name Alice, a last name Johnson, and 3 scores, 85, 90, and 78. Then the adjust scores messes with that copy. If that doesn't sound right to you, if that doesn't ring any bells from lecture, review pass by value and pass by reference out of your textbook, right? We create a copy of the variable. This 85 becomes 90. This 90 becomes 87. and this 78 becomes 80. Great. Then the function ends, and I can erase this copy, because after a function is over, unless I return it, the data gets lost. So pass by value, not super helpful here. Then we print the student. The format is the same. The print student function didn't change, but now the data is different. So I would say student, I would say Alice Johnson, and then I have math, and this one has a score of 85. Science, 90, and English, 78. Definitely tricky. Pass by value and pass by reference are probably one of the most complicated topics for this class, but hopefully this makes sense.